Thanks for tuning in to Murder News, the true crime cult for the latest breaking news, murdery memes, TV reviews, podcast recommendations, and all things spooky. Come stay warm with us by the fire as we cuddle down with the Murder News goats, hang out with our cult family, and discuss the new documentary about Richard Ramirez. I'm television's Aurora Katie.
I'm your online murder friend, Angelina. Cults are no fun alone, so don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell all of your true crime friends to join the commune at murder.news. This is the Week in True Crime.
Murder News.
Last week, in a sickening display of abuse of power, Memphis police officer Patrick Ferguson pushed a personal problem to its fatal limits, all while on duty. Ferguson showed up at a residence on Mark Twain Street brandishing a gun, and then forced 30-year-old Robert Howard into his squad car. He then drove to Fraser Boulevard and Denver Street, about a half-mile away, where he shot Howard in the back of his squad car. Next, the officer drove to the home of his friend Joshua Rogers, who helped him move and ultimately dump Howard's body, which was found near 2nd Street and the Wolf River Bridge. Robert Howard was a well-loved musician and father of 3, who was just getting over a bout of COVID-19 when he was kidnapped, just shy of his 31st birthday. The loss of life is always tragic, and I feel for the Howard family, said Memphis Mayor Jim Strickland. And the fact that he was a police officer who took an oath to protect and serve others makes this murder even more tragic. Ferguson had a personal beef with Robert Howard, who was in a relationship with another officer from the department who Ferguson used to date. In fact, it was Howard's girlfriend who filed the missing persons report that sparked the investigation into his disappearance and ultimately his murder. Over the course of the investigation, authorities found searches in his phone history about how to clean up crime scenes, video surveillance that showed him purchasing cinder blocks, chains, and padlocks, and even surveillance footage that showed him fatally shooting Howard. Officer Patrick Ferguson has been removed from his position and charged with first-degree murder in perpetration of aggravated kidnapping, abuse of a corpse, and fabricating and tampering with evidence. His accomplice, Joshua Rogers, faces charges of abuse of a corpse, accessory after the fact, and tampering with and fabricating evidence. Rogers posted the $25,000 bail and took to Facebook to explain, saying that he feared for his life and was intimidated into helping his friend. Memphis Police Director Michael Railings called this murder one of the most despicable acts he's ever dealt with, saying, "I hope he never sees the light of day. The fact that this young man was murdered by a Memphis police officer is sickening." Both men made their first court appearances via video this past Monday, but Police Director Railings says this is very much an ongoing investigation and that Howard's family and the community deserve answers. If you have any information, contact Crime Stoppers at the number in the details below.
There's always debate in the true crime community about whether or not politics should be discussed, and I've always been of the belief that true crime is political whether we like it or not. So we're gonna kind of jump into the deep end today, and I want to talk a bit about the death penalty, which I know can be very heated in discussions, but let's try to do this and keep things calm. Because since July of 2020, the Trump administration has overseen 10 federal executions and has scheduled 3 more for this week alone. That's a higher yearly total than under any other presidency since the 1800s, according to a report by the Death Penalty Information Center. Just a warning that the 3 scheduled for this week are being contested, and by the time this episode airs on Friday, it's possible that some of the information will be out of date. We're so sorry about that. You can always go to murder.news for more current information about any of these cases. But let's go over some of the facts. For the past 17 years, the federal government has overseen exactly 0 executions. The federal death penalty was actually ruled unconstitutional in 1972, but was reinstated in 1988, and then for a very narrow class of offenses. So who has been ordered to be executed by Trump before the end of his presidency on the 20th? Lisa Montgomery, the only woman on federal death row, was executed at 1:31 a.m. Wednesday morning. Now, Lisa's crime was admittedly incredibly horrific. She was convicted of strangling a pregnant woman, 23-year-old Bobby Jo Stinnett, and removing her baby from her womb in 2004. It's super terrible. I don't want to play down how upsetting her crime was. It's just awful. Where Lisa's story gets complicated is that she suffered from years of sexual and physical abuse from the age of 3. She was sex trafficked by her stepfather and mother, and at one point during her abuse, her head was slammed so hard against the cement floor that she suffered severe brain damage. Lisa suffered from mental illness as a result of the abuse and brain damage, and while the murder of Bobby Jo Stinnett is so brutal and so terrible, many feel the death penalty is not appropriate punishment for her crime, and that treatment for her mental health and brain damage would be more suitable. Dustin Higgs, at the time of this recording, is set to be executed on Friday, but was convicted of the murders of Tamika Black, Mishan Chin, and Tangi Jackson. In January of 1996, Dustin Higgs and 2 accomplices, Willis Mark Haynes and Victor Gloria, promised to drive the 3 women home one night after the women turned down their advances, but instead of taking them home, the men drove them to a remote area. According to Willis, Dustin said to him, "Better make sure they're dead," and Willis then shot the 3 women. Willis, who actually shot them, was sentenced to life plus 45 years. Victor made a plea deal and only served 7 years in prison. And Dustin, who stayed in the car at the time of the murder, was awarded the death penalty. While I do feel that Dustin shared some of the responsibility for the murders of Tamika, Mishan, and Tangi, I'm not suggesting overturning his conviction. One other issue I would like to mention is I was unable to find pictures or really any information about Tamika, Mishan, and Tangi and their lives, and their murders are always being told through the lens of their killers, which is super problematic. The last person set to be executed by the Trump administration is Cory Johnson, who is set to be executed what will now be yesterday, Thursday. So we'll have an update again on our website about whether or not his was carried out. But Cory was a member of the No Town drug gang, which killed 10 people in 1992. While I'm admittedly not a fan of the death penalty, it does sound like there's not a whole lot of gray area in this case. We want to know what your thoughts are on the death penalty and the increase of federal executions over the past 6 months. We will also go further into this topic on our brand new podcast, which is coming soon, and we'll talk more about the pros and cons of the death penalty, the real cost of housing a prisoner for life versus the cost of execution, and more on that topic. As always, I've included links to my sources and the details down below, and let us know what your thoughts are as well. Just please keep it civil.
This week, we're watching Vampires vs. the Bronx on Netflix. If you're in the mood for a family-friendly horror comedy with vampires, this is the movie for you. Vampires vs. the Bronx is a satire of gentrification and follows a group of teenagers who are forced to protect their neighborhood in the Bronx when a gathering of vampires invades and people in the neighborhood begin to disappear. If you're in the Murder News book club, it may feel very reminiscent of the book When No One Is Watching, which is a horror book making a statement on gentrification and has a pretty similar plot. If you loved When No One Is Watching, definitely check out Vampires vs. the Bronx.
So I am so excited about this week's favorite podcast because, first of all, I love a really good theme, and this theme is so good. You Should Have Ghosted is a true crime comedy podcast that specifically discusses the dark side of online dating, which may be my biggest fear from when I was still single. Hosts Lizzie and Shayna shared the worst case scenarios of Tinder dates gone terribly awry. Shayna and Lizzie, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
We're good. Thank you
for having us.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
We're so excited you're here. And let me say that the 2 types of true crime stories that really get me the most are survival stories and dating stories gone bad. And I've been married for a few years now, and I actually met my husband on Tinder, but I have a pretty disastrous and chaotic 15 years or so of dating. So it's amazing to hear all of these stories that went worse than mine.
Yeah, I know. It was scary. Just thinking about doing this is like scary. What if we're offending people, you know?
Right. Right. No, it's wonderful. So with all of that, what inspired you to start your podcast? Where did this idea come from? How did it come together?
So Liz and I have been friends for a couple of years, And we both listen to a lot of true crime podcasts and true crime comedy podcasts specifically because we just have dark, morbid senses of humor. And so I'm married. I've been married to my husband for about a year and a half. We've been together for 8 years. So I never really got to experience online dating in depth.
Lucky.
I met him online, but he's the first person I met in person, and that's kind of it. So Liz recently became single last year in April, and she would send me these bios that were just horrible. And I would just, do my old lady married thing and make fun of them and say, this is a red flag. This person's weird. Don't talk to them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then we kind of naturally applied our true crime minds to it and said, I wonder if there's a podcast about these kinds of crimes. And there wasn't a single one. So we took the ball into our court and made our own.
Yep.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So what's your true crime origin? Do either of you have a story of like a murder in your hometown or a story that has always haunted you?
So the thing that really got me into true crime is I used to go to my grandma's house after school, like starting in 5th grade. So she would be watching like unsolved murder or unsolved mysteries and stuff like that. And I just got like obsessed from a very young age. And then when I started listening to podcasts, I started just going right into true crime. So I think that was pretty much it, like true crime comedy podcasts usually. So that's kind of what we tried to base it off of.
Nice.
Yeah. But I don't have like a hometown story though.
No, just like your choice of entertainment from an early age.
Exactly.
And how about for you, Shayna?
I'm kind of the same way. There wasn't a particular event that spun it off for me, but I was watching at a very inappropriate age. I was watching things like Unsolved Mysteries and America's Most Wanted, and even shows like Rescue 911. I don't know if you remember that one, but
Yes.
it was just, it planted this seed, this kind of dark seed in my brain of just being fascinated in crimes and murder and violence, and not in a weird way, but
Right.
just wanting to know more about those people and wanting to understand the victims and just all of that. It's always been very interesting to me. And I would say from a very young age, that kind of took off. And I think especially for us as women, there seems to be more of a fascination with true crime, I think because of the nature of the crime. So, you get older and you have close calls or you have some scary experiences, and you really start to realize that any of us could be a victim at any time. And I think that's why we're all so interested with it, is because this keeps us alive. Yeah.
It's like an education tool almost, or like
It really is.
Survival tactic.
Yeah.
You guys should really be taxed that way too. Educational resource.
Absolutely.
Well, you've all had some really amazing and shocking episodes. I really enjoyed your recent episode on Casey Woody, which was so sad and tragic. I also found the episode you did on the California furries to be really interesting. And that one's really good. And out of all the cases you've researched, which is the one that's really stuck with you the most?
I think for me, it was the most recent one I just did with the teacher. Was that the one that just came out? No? Oh, okay.
I got on Tuesday.
Okay, that's fine then.
Spoil it.
Coming soon.
Coming soon.
Yeah, sorry, you're gonna get like an early release for it. I just I was looking for a female who like sexually assaulted like a man, because we always do men for the scumbag of the week. So I was just looking for something different, and I found this teacher who had a 9-month relationship with a 13-year-old boy student that was in her class, and she got pregnant with him. And I was like, oh, it just freaked me out. I was like, oh, this is horrendous.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gross. Like, just one of the quotes from it, like one of the judges said, we want our teachers to educate students. We want them to keep their hands off of them. And I was like,
yes, please.
Yeah, I was like, oh,
Like,
that's
bare minimum.
Yeah. You think, but
Gross.
Yeah.
And Sheena, do you have a favorite case too?
I do. And you actually brought it up. Casey Woody for me was the most gut-wrenching to read about, the most gut-wrenching to report on. I did cry a little when we were recording it. And it's just because she was young. And
She was
her
like
trust,
12, right?
She was 12. She was 12 and she thought she was talking to this teenage boy. And it was a 47-year-old man. And that in itself is horrifying and tragic. But the part that really gets me is we all did that, you know, when we first got the internet, and we all had, you know, the AIM chat rooms, talking to people and giving your ASL. It hits me because that could have been any of us. And
yeah, totally.
It's what your parents say to you, you know, don't talk to strangers online. We all did it. And it could have been any of us. And it's just horrifying that this man developed such an obsession and flew across the country to get to her. And it really sticks with me, and it will probably for a very long time.
Yeah.
Because she would have been my age now. So
wow.
Yeah, it's a horrifying story, definitely.
Yeah, you're right. And I think it's kind of easy to forget some of that, because you're right. Now I think that there's more access to like photos and whatever, and not that people can't catfish people, that clearly still happens. But when I was like 15 is the first time I got AOL. And I just remember being in all these chat rooms and being like, I'm 15. And all these dudes being like, me too. Yeah. And you're like, I don't really think you are. Like you have a car and you offered to drive to see me in small town, Ohio. Like, I don't think 15-year-olds do that. But like, it's just so upsetting. And the fact that she was 12 too, it's like 15 is young, but like, oh, like what a baby. Like,
that's one thing where it's like, you know, people always like to warn about or argue about sort of the dangers of the internet or online dating and that kind of thing. And I always feel like it's a little silly to direct it specifically at that, because when you're talking about adults anyways, I mean, you could meet a psycho anywhere, right? You just bump into one in the shop on the corner, but like, when it comes to children, it's really something different, because like that's the one place where, you know, they can really be fooled. Like they'll just believe anything you say and be like, oh yeah, you're 13. Why would you lie about that? Yeah. I have no, you know, like
no reason to distrust people yet because I'm a child.
Yeah.
Wow. It's so scary. Can I also just add something I thought was really funny? I actually was having a conversation with a guy today. Not a Tinder guy. And I told him about like what we were going to talk about and stuff today. And he said, I've never thought about women having to worry about random strangers talking to them and having them distract them while somebody comes up and sneaks up and like kidnaps them and sex traffics them. And I was like, what? How did you not think about that? Like
privilege.
Exactly. Exactly. I didn't even realize that men wouldn't think about that. Like
you have to think of that like starting at the age of freaking 12, you know, like, maybe even sooner for some girls, but like oh, terrible.
We're always on.
Yeah.
Always ready.
This is kind of a funny story. One of our podcast friends that we had on the show a while ago, I don't know if you all listen to Crime and Roses or if you're friends with them. I think everybody in this world kind of knows each other, which is great. But I can't remember her name. Is it Danielle? I think it's Danielle, the host. She used to go through drills with her mom as a kid of what to do if somebody tries to kidnap her. Her mom would make her act it out and like lay on the ground and like slam her feet against the ground and yell and scream and make herself harder to carry away.
Oh my gosh.
And I love that so much because it's like, on one hand, it's like, yeah, like that was a smart mom. But on the other hand, it is so sad that if you have a little girl, that's something you have to consider.
Yeah, it's funny, but it's sad.
Yeah.
That would be me as a mom. Like, regardless of gender of my children, I would be doing that because it's like, you never know.
Well, you can't control other people, but you can teach your kid, just in case. This is what you do.
Absolutely.
No one wants to steal a child throwing a tantrum on the floor.
That's very smart.
Be the most annoying child you can be.
I'm going to do that as an adult.
Yes.
My mom always told me that the kidnappers would return me because
Amazing. So one last question, really. Where can our viewers find you on social media?
Oh, they can find us on Instagram at You Should Have Ghosted.
We're on Twitter at GhostedPod.
We have a Facebook group. It's You Should Have Ghosted, hosted by our Facebook page, You Should Have Ghosted.
We also have an email where we are always accepting cringy and creepy dating stories. It's youshouldhaveghosted@gmail.com.
Yep. And then we have a link tree. It's linktree/You Should Have Ghosted, and then a regular website, youshouldhaveghosted.com.
Amazing.
Right.
Awesome. And be sure to subscribe to You Should Have Ghosted wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. And also because Angelina and I are going to be on an upcoming episode, and I'm going to tell the horrendous story of when my husband and I met on Tinder, and you will all be like, why in the world did you marry this man? So tune in soon.
That's so funny.
We love reading your comments, so long as you're not a troll. And we want to thank M's Coffee Convos for commenting that John, our guest from last week, puts his whole heart into his cases and is a great storyteller.
Thanks to Jackie Montoya for commenting that she loves John, and he is so good at telling victims' story in such a beautiful way.
Thanks so much for tuning into This Week in True Crime with Murder Murder News. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button below, give us a thumbs up, and tell all of your true crime friends.
Help support Murder Murder News by signing up for our commune at murdermurder.news, and your $5 a month sponsorship helps keep the true crime lights on. It helps us produce our weekly show and helps support our amazing writers that keep you up to date with the latest breaking news every day at murdermurder.news. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. See you next week.